that so I had read this somewhere again ki writing about love is always going to be timeless, like anything you write about love and relationships, because that is something, man is a social animal, you can't help but form relationships. So like, is there any merit to this? Like like I don't know how to frame the
No,
question,
I
but
think
my
you're right
huh.
at one level that, novels, for instance, written with a political message for the time,
Hmm.
or something that's written for the moment,
Hmm.
uh, often they have their more, I mean, they're great for that particular time, and not everything will last. But then on the other hand, you might write a book like 1984, which we
Hmm.
pull up every now and then and say, wow,
Yeah,
that got it
yeah,
right. You know, 1984 is well past, but I
yeah.
think we'll be reading this forever. So
Hmm.
there's those. But I think relationships are at the heart of almost every successful book,
Hmm.
especially in fiction.
Yeah.
That's really what makes it work. I mean, it doesn't have to be relationship centric, as in, it doesn't have to be romance. It
Hmm.
doesn't have to
Yeah.
be about love in a certain way only. It could be about the love of a child and a dog.
Hmm. Yeah.
It could be, I don't know, Nemo, because that was also about the love of, well, parent and
Yeah, yeah,
child and the
yeah.
world. So yes, relationships are at the heart of everything successful. But I think it's not a straightforward formula that therefore anything that has to do with relationships or romance will work perennially.
Yeah, of
No, I
course.
don't think
Yeah.
that's true. It has to be written with a certain kind of depth, a certain feeling, and the ability that it has to evoke that feeling in your reader. It doesn't matter if you're reading Georgette Eyre in the Regency romance. If
Hmm.
you're reading it now and you still feel like, oh, there's that frisson between the man and the woman, that works. It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got
Yeah.
literally nothing to do with the fact of the kind of Regency clothes they're wearing or where they're sitting or whatever. But
Right.
I mean, Jane Austen, right? Classic case, goes
I was
on and
about to
on and on with
mention
Yeah.
Jane
adaptations.
Austen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in that sense, yes, I think the most powerful books that have remained with us are about relationships, and it's going to be forever the case. Like, read science fiction, for instance, right? There are lots of people who really love reading science fiction because of the science of it, because they like the new worlds that are being written up, etc. I read science fiction, and I'm still most interested in that kind of science fiction where the relationships between the characters are in some way different or interesting or
Yes.
perennial. You know, the science for me is a
Yeah.
secondary thing. So
Hmm.
I guess in any genre that you work with, finally it comes down to how you write relationships.
Yeah. I'm
Nice.
a big science fiction nerd also. A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet immediately comes to mind.
Right.
Hitchhiker's Guide.
Hitchhiker's Guide is
Yeah.
another great one.
Yeah.
There was this recent book I was reading, Andy Weir's book, I think, which is again
Uh-huh.
about relationships. Uh, I feel like, that's so spot on, Kartika, because I'm rereading Asimov,
Hmm.
the
Uh-huh.
Foundation series.
Hmm.
Yeah.
First time I read it, I was more into it for the science. Now that I'm reading it, I'm like, oh, Hari Seldon and his son's relationship is so beautiful, and the
Yeah.
robot's relationship with someone else is so like touching. I'm
Yeah.
also noticing those nuances.
Hmm.
So I think
Right.
everything that involves a human being would have that
Yeah.
sort of
That's
angle,
Yeah.
true.
right?
That's
Yeah.
true.
But just coming to your point again, that one thing that, so Kartika, tell me, so like love and relationship, right?
Hmm.
So this, you pick up this one idea which can be timeless as a
Hmm.
into a book once
Yeah.
you incorporate it into a book. Is it necessary to do that though? Like, for example, just an example, like when you said like a book written in the current political situation, right? So
Hmm.
if I
Yeah.
write, say, let's say a book about CAA and RC,
Hmm.
right,
Hmm.
about whatever, a very good look at the CAA and RC protest, etc. is, is that also what you would say is timeless? Would that also count? Would have a timeless
Yeah.
thread in it?
So I think that would depend entirely on the kind of approach you take. If you're going to
Hmm.
write about it as a persuasive documentation of how it all happened, how the protests were actually staged, what Shaheen Bagh looked like, who were the people who went there, what
Hmm.
were the other venues of protest, etc., etc. You talk about those people who were there and what they set out to achieve. And this book then is about trying to get more readers to understand how it went and to become a convert to the cause, right? You
Right.
could write a book like that. Or you could write a completely different book, which is, say, a great photographer goes out there and takes photographs of all of these people at various venues protesting the CAA and lives around them. And this could become a photographic book, which is really about great photographs. And this
Right.
might be something you will
Interesting.
look at 100 years down the line and say, just look at the quality of this imaging, the imagination, the kind of people, what they wore, where they lived, how they lived, right? So it becomes a completely different book. And you might just do a completely third kind of book, which is it could be a book about two young women meeting at a protest place, getting to know each
Yes.
other, maybe falling in love, maybe becoming fast
Oh.
friends. It could be any of those. And that might just become a relationship book primarily. And the CAA
Oh.
protest is a
Hmm.
background, is the setting,
Yeah.
right?
Something
So
Right.
like
I
the
think
book
it's so
thief.
much
Yeah.
about the way you choose to deal with it.
Yeah, exactly like the book
The
thief. I
book
was
thief,
I was just
yeah.
thinking of that as
Like
well.
love story set against the backdrop of a war or like a, you know,
Yeah.
they are the. I think they work really well.
Right.
Yeah, and also
I
I
have.
remember Granta had this brilliant collection of writing once on war. When you mentioned war, I thought about it. And they did a lot of diaries, like there were first person accounts. So this woman who was in Sarajevo at the time of the bombings and war, she was doing this daily diary about what it was like inside. And you can see people doing that on Twitter now in Ukraine, telling you what they woke up to coffee and then this happened and that happened on the day, etc.
Yeah.
And that, depending on how it's written, it can be this amazing document of human trauma, survival, uh,
Hmm.
all of these things, which doesn't matter which war it is, doesn't matter which period it is. It is a situation that will be replicated a million times over in the next million years that humankind may live if they live that long. And it will remain relevant. Only the
Hmm.
specifics will change, but the emotions, I doubt that they would change.